The Seven Dials Mystery, Chapter 21. The Recovery of the Formula. Der liebe Gott, said Herr Eberhard in a whisper. His face had gone chalky white. George turned a face of dignified reproach on Battle. Is this true, Battle? I left all arrangements in your hands. The rock-like quality of the superintendent showed out well. Not a muscle of his face moved. The best of us are defeated sometimes, sir, he said quietly. Then you really mean that the document is gone? But to everyone's intense surprise, Superintendent Battle shook his head. No, Mr. Lomax, it's not so bad as you think. Everything's all right, but you can't lay the credit for it at my door. You've got to thank this young lady, he indicated Lorraine, who stared at him in surprise. Battle stepped across to her and gently took the brown paper parcel, which she was still clutching mechanically. I think, Mr. Lomax, he said, that you will find what you want here. Sir Stanley Digby, quicker in action than George, snatched at the package and tore it open, investigating its contents eagerly. A sigh of relief escaped him, and he mopped his brow. Herr Eberhard fell upon the child of his brain and clasped it to his heart, whilst a torrent of German burst from him. Sir Stanley turned to Lorraine, shaking her warmly by the hand. My dear young lady, he said, we are infinitely obliged to you, I am sure. Yes, indeed, said George. Though He paused in some perplexity, staring at a young lady who was a total stranger to him. Lorraine looked appealingly at Jimmy, who came to the rescue. This is Miss Wade, said Jimmy. Gerald Wade's sister? Indeed, said George, shaking her warmly by the hand. My dear Miss Wade, I must express my deep gratitude to you for what you have done. I must confess that I do not quite see. He paused delicately, and for if the persons present felt that explanations were going to be fraught with much difficulty, Superintendent Battle came to the rescue. Perhaps we'd better not go into that just now, sir, he suggested tactfully. The efficient Mr. Bateman created a further diversion. Wouldn't it be wise for someone to see to O'Rourke? Don't you think, sir, that a doctor had better be sent for? Of course, said George. Of course. Most remiss of us not to have thought of it before. He looked towards Bill. Get Dr. Cartwright on the telephone. Ask him to come. Just hint, if you can, that discretion should be observed. Bill went off on his errand. I will come up with you, Digby, said George. Something possibly could be done. Measures should perhaps be taken, whilst awaiting the arrival of the doctor. He looked rather helplessly at Rupert Bateman. Efficiency always makes itself felt. It was Pongo who was really in charge of the situation. Shall I come up with you, sir? George accepted the offer with relief. Here, he felt, was someone on whom he could lean. He experienced that sense of complete trust in Mr. Bateman's efficiency, which came to all those who encountered that excellent young man. The three men left the room together, Lady Coote murmuring in deep, rich tones. The poor young fellow, perhaps I could do something, hurried after them. That's a very motherly woman, observed the superintendent thoughtfully. A very motherly woman. I wonder, 3 pairs of eyes looked at him inquiringly. I was wondering, said Superintendent Battle slowly, where Sir Oswald Coote may be. Oh, gasped Lorraine. Do you think he's been murdered? Battle shook his head at her reproachfully. No need for anything so melodramatic, he said. No, I rather think. He paused, his head on one side, listening, one large hand raised to enjoin silence. Dawn. In another minute, they all heard what his sharper ears had been the first to notice. Footsteps coming along the terrace outside. They rang out clearly, with no kind of subterfuge about them. In another minute, the window was blocked by a bulky figure which stood there regarding them, and who conveyed, in an odd way, a sense of dominating the situation. Sir Oswald, for it was he, looked slowly from one face to another. His keen eyes took in the details of the situation. Jimmy, with his roughly bandaged arm, Bundle, in her somewhat anomalous attire. Lorraine, a perfect stranger to him. His eyes came last to Superintendent Battle. He spoke sharply and crisply. What's been happening here, officer? Attempted robbery, sir. Attempted, eh? Thanks to this young lady, Miss Wade, the thieves failed to get away with it. Ah, he said again, his scrutiny ended. Now, officer, what about this? He held out a small Mauser pistol which he carried delicately by the butt. Where'd you find that, Sir Oswald? On the lawn outside? I presume it must have been thrown down by one of the thieves as he took to his heels. I've held it carefully, as I thought you might wish to examine it for fingerprints. You think of everything, Sir Oswald, said Battle. He took the pistol from the other, handling it with equal care, and laid it down on the table beside Jimmy's Colt. And now, if you please, said Sir Oswald, I should like to hear exactly what occurred. Superintendent Battle gave a brief resume of the events of the night. Sir Oswald frowned thoughtfully. I understand, he said sharply. After wounding and disabling Mr. Thesiger, the man took to his heels and ran, throwing away the pistol as he did so. What I cannot understand is why no one pursued him. It wasn't till we heard Mr. Thesiger's story that we knew there was anyone to pursue, remarked Superintendent Battle dryly. You didn't, catch sight of him making off as you turned the corner of the terrace. No, I missed him by just about 40 seconds, I should say. There's no moon, and he'd be invisible as soon as he'd left the terrace. He must have leapt for it as soon as he'd fired the shot. A.M. said, Sir Oswald, I still think that a search should have been organized. Someone else should have been posted. There are 3 of my men in the grounds, said the superintendent quietly. Oh, Sir Oswald seemed rather taken aback. They were to hold and detain anyone attempting to leave the grounds. And yet they haven't done so. And yet they haven't done so, agreed Battle gravely. Sir Oswald looked at him as though something in the words puzzled him. He said sharply, Are you telling me all that you know, Superintendent Battle? All that I know? Yes, Sir Oswald. What I think is a different matter. Maybe I think some rather curious things, but until thinking's got you somewhere, it's no use talking about it. And yet, said Sir Oswald slowly, I should like to know what you think, Superintendent Battle. For one thing, sir, I think there's a lot too much ivy about this place. Excuse me, sir, you've got a bit on your coat. Yes, a great deal too much ivy. It complicates things. Sir Oswald stared at him, but any reply he might have contemplated making was arrested by the entrance of Rupert Bateman. Oh, there you are, Sir Oswald. I'm so glad. Lady Coote has just discovered that you were missing, and she has been insisting upon it that you had been murdered by the thieves. I really think, Sir Oswald, that you had better come to her at once. She's terribly upset. Maria is an incredibly foolish woman, said Sir Oswald. Why should I be murdered? I'll come with you, Bateman. He left the room with his secretary. That's a very efficient young man, said Battle, looking after them. What's his name? Bateman? Jimmy nodded. Bateman Rupert, he said. Is commonly known as Pongo. I was at school with him. Were you now? That's interesting, Mr. Thesiger. What was your opinion of him in those days? He was always the same sort of ass. I shouldn't have thought, said Battle mildly, that he was an ass. Oh, you know what I mean. Of course he wasn't really an ass. Tons of brains, and always swatting at things, but deadly serious. No sense of humor. Ah, said Superintendent Battle. That's a pity, gentlemen, who have no sense of humor get to taking themselves too seriously, and that leads to mischief. I can't imagine Pongo getting into mischief, said Jimmy. He's done extremely well for himself so far. Dug himself in with old Coote, and looks like being a permanency in the job. Superintendent Battle, said Bundle. Yes, Lady Eileen. Doen't you think it very odd that Sir Oswald did, and say what he was doing wandering about in the garden in the middle of the night? Ah, said Battle. Oswald's a great man, and a great man always knows better than to explain unless an explanation is demanded. To rush into explanations and excuses is always a sign of weakness. Sir Oswald knows that as well as I do. He's not going to come in explaining and apologizing. Not he. He just stalks in and hauls me over the coals. He's a big man, Sir Oswald. Such a warm admiration sounded in the superintendent's tones that Bundle pursued the subject no further. And now, said Superintendent Battle, looking round with a slight twinkle in his eye, now that we're together and friendly-like, I should like to hear just how Miss Wade happened to arrive on the scene so pat. She ought to be ashamed of herself, said Jimmy, hoodwinking us all as she did. Why should I be kept out of it all? Lorraine passionately. I never meant to be. No, not the very first day in your rooms when you both explained how the best thing for me to do was to stay quietly at home and keep out of danger. I didn't say anything, but I made up my mind then. I half suspected it, said Bundle. You were so surprisingly meek about it. I might have known you were up to something. I thought you were remarkably sensible, said Jimmy Thesiger. You would, Jimmy dear, said Lorraine. It was easy enough to deceive you. Thank you for these kind words, said Jimmy. Go on, and don't mind me. When you rang up and said there might be danger, I was more determined than ever, went on Lorraine. I went to Harrod's and I bought a pistol. Here it is. She produced the dainty weapon, and Superintendent Battle took it from her and examined it. "Ain't quite a deadly little toy, Miss Wade," he said. "Have you had much, practice with it?" "None at all," said Lorraine. "But I thought if I took it with me, well, that it would give me a comforting feeling." "Quite so," said Battle gravely. "My idea was to come over here and see what was going on. I left the car in the road and climbed through the hedge and came up to the terrace. I was just looking about me when, plop, something fell right at my feet. Picked it up and then looked to see where it could have come from. And then I saw the man climbing down the ivy and I ran." "Just so," said Battle. "Now, Miss Wade, can you describe that man at all?" The girl shook her head. "It was too dark to see much. I think he was a big man, but that's about all. And now you, Mr. Thesiger." Battle turned to him. "You struggled with the man. Can you tell me anything about him?" "He was a pretty hefty individual. That's all I can say." Gave a few hoarse whispers. "That's when I had him by the throat," said Lemmy. "Go, governor," something like that. "An uneducated man, then?" "Yes, I suppose he was. He spoke like one." "I still don't quite understand about the packet," said Lorraine. "Why should he throw it down as he did? Is it because it hampered him climbing?" "No," said Battle. "I've got an entirely different theory about that. That packet, Miss Wade, was deliberately thrown down to you, or so I believe. To me, shall we say. To the person the thief thought you were." "This is getting very involved," said Jimmy. "Mr. Thesiger, when you came into this room, did you switch on the light at all?" "Yes, and there was no one in the room, no one at all." "But previously you thought you heard someone moving about down here?" "Yes." "And then, after trying the window, you switched off the light again and locked the door?" Jimmy nodded. Superintendent Battle looked slowly round him. His glance was arrested by a big screen of Spanish leather, which stood near one of the bookcases. Brusquely he strode across the room and looked behind it. He uttered a sharp ejaculation, which brought the three young people quickly to his side. Huddled on the floor, in a dead faint, lay the Countess Radsky.